The voice of reason has finally prevailed on the Central Bank of Nigeria regarding its cash withdrawal policy. Now, the Apex Bank has bowed to pressure by reversing its earlier daily cash withdrawal limit for individuals to 20,000 naira and 100,000 naira for corporate organizations. The CBN has increased weekly withdrawals for individuals to 100,000 naira rather, and corporate organizations to 5 million naira. In a statement, the bank admitted that the cash transactions are very important to the Nigerian economy, as it is important, most widely used style of transaction in the country. Meanwhile, this was in line with what Babajide and other guests canvassed when the issue came up for discussion on the program.
These policies are good. It's meant to sort of sanitize our financial system. Good. It's meant to, railroad us, as it were, towards cashless policy. Either we are ready or not. That's my fear. Because if you say, look at it, for instance, 200 naira will be the highest denomination from an ATM, and the highest you can get with 20,000 naira
per day.
That's it, if it is 100,000 naira per week. So if you know the volume of cash the informal sector needs to operate, you understand that this would create a lot of problems. Forget the formal sector. We always find a way around it. If the transfer is not working, you can call your account officer and all that. But what happens to those artisans who they have a contract on their hand, a building contract, for example? He needs to pay laborers.
I've been against this from the day the CBN governor, the CBN made the announcement. I am not a banker, but I don't have to be a banker to know the pain that this will inflict on our people. Some people imagine that because they are in power and in government, that they are all-knowing, and that whatever policy they come up with, whether it makes sense or not, we just have to accept it. But we've seen them come up with policy after policy that have failed to achieve anything meaningful. And the CBN governor, this current CBN governor, is an example of such government officials. How many of the policies that he has come up with can stand the real test of critical scrutiny? How many? Not even the anchor borrowers program that they make so much noise about. Now, talking about this policy, the CBN wants us to believe that, it believes in financial inclusion. The whole goal of the cashless policy was to deepen financial inclusion. That was what they told us back then. But what have we seen? You want money agents, popularly known as POS operators in our country, you want them to be able to withdraw only 20,000 from people's accounts in a day. We are not saying, look, this policy is bad, because some people will misunderstand me now to say the policy is bad. No, one is not saying that. We are looking at the timing. It's not something that you can simply dump on us and say, look, we have to start. Even here in Lagos, sometimes you want to use your card, as they say, there's no network. You have to take care of the infrastructure needs. That's power, telecommunication. You've not addressed that sufficiently, and you think this thing will just work. That means you are living in a different country.
Okay. Are you telling me that is the amount we bought rice last year, December, that we are buying rice today? How do you want him to transfer business of 700,000 when the cap is, what's the amount of it?
500,000 for business accounts, 100,000 for individual
accounts. How's
accounts.
going to do it?
What we are saying is this thing has to be done gradually. You don't just wake up one day and say, I know. So those who sit in the urban centers and are thinking, this thing can work, they don't give a hoot about those in the very distant rural areas in our country. You are not more Nigerian than those people. Some of them work harder than the people in the cities who even have access to money that they can steal.
Well, you and I know that mortality is a leveler. The man is looking at the end of his tenure and he's looking back. I could not see anything of value that he has added in relative terms to the normal people of Nigeria. So whatever he's doing now is basically a knee-jerk approach to create a legacy. And I can tell you this is not going to work.
Now, discordant tunes are emanating from the... All right, let's quickly go on to our discussion on this very issue where we have Babajide, giving his own perspective rather on this same issue we've talked about earlier on in the week. When you mentioned this matter initially, when we discussed this, you were like, this is too soon. We should need to take this gradually from what you've readily seen on the playback. But now we've had this happening. Some would say he was really, will I say, arm twisted. Because already we had situations where allegations of him financing terrorism, we had situations where Nigerians really, really kicked against this, and the lawmakers as well. But when you saw this news, when the news broke out that the policy has been reviewed, how did it, what first came to mind? Were you surprised, or what did you make out of it?
No, I wasn't surprised. I knew we would be forced to change it. There was a time that Sanusi, the former CBN governor, just woke up one day and said he was going to come up with the 5,000 naira note. Of course, he was resisted. The fact that the CBN has autonomy does not mean that a CBN governor can just wake up and come up with a policy that will turn many Nigerians to paupers. Look at many people trying to survive on this work as money agents, these POS people. By the time you say that they can only take
20,000 naira.
So a lot of them will die. Let's look at the mass. Let's look at the mechanism, the way this thing will work. A lot of them will be out of business. And many businesses are dying in our country. The bulk of the economy, our GDP,
right?
It is what is done in the rural areas. Agriculture
is the main
when you're talking about Nigeria's GDP, agriculture gives us so much, and a lot of that is done in the rural areas. These are places where you need to build a house, you don't have to move cash around. In any case, there are no banks in a lot of those places. Banks are now limited to urban centers because robbers continue to attack them. The other day, they went to Isanlu in Kogi State. They killed 9 policemen just because they wanted to attack a bank. So they knew that, okay, this police station attached to this town, let's go and render it prostrate so that they can't offer any kind of protection to the bank workers. And they went there, carted money away. So how it then means that if you don't have a bank account in Nigeria today, you can hardly do any form of business. That's what it means. Now, what did survey that they did when they made this thing, when they trialed this cashless
economy
policy, what was the report that they came up with? We don't know the report that they came up with. The report will have shown them that, look, you can't do this thing in a wholesale fashion. Right. You have to incrementally do it. That's the point that I'm making.
Right.
I can't sit here and say cashless policy is a wrong thing, although I know some Nigerians who deliberately misunderstand people. That's what they will say I'm saying. But we are saying that when you look at our people, and that's what a lot of those federal lawmakers too are saying,
right?
That there are no banks in those communities. In my own community, for example, for almost 30 years now, we've not had a bank. Why? Because the rural areas are targeted by robbers. Banks deliberately even stopped operating in places where they do not feel safe. This is the thing. So everyone now, you think everyone can suddenly begin to put money in the banks. No, that won't happen. It has to be a gradual process. 85% of cash outside the banking sector is worrisome. It's bad. I don't like it. But it's not something that you can just wake up one day and think you can do it in a gradual fashion. No, it cannot work. And that's why I said, if those lawmakers allow him to do it, that means they don't know what they are doing. And there was pressure. Because I remember that the House of Rep Speaker announced that he was going to see the president about this. So I'm not surprised. Let people who are saying that, oh, it's because he was arm twisted. He also said that, look, that they can increase.
Yeah.
Do you remember?
Yeah, absolutely.
He said we can increase it, but we will not stop the policy. So that's what he has done. Nobody needs to arm twist him. They just need to sit him down and say, gentleman, it appears you are not living in Nigeria. This cannot work. This is the reason it cannot work. You go to Borno State. In how many communities do you have banks? It's in the state capital. You need to go to a bank in Borno.
Places that matter.
In Borno, in Maiduguri,
right.
You need to go into a banking hall in Maiduguri. Total bedlam. Everywhere jam-packed. Because in the rural areas, those farmers don't have any bank where they can put their money. They all have to come to that place. Okay, is this same CBN governor now is going to change the look and feel of our currency? And what have they done? They can't supply the banks with enough. You go to a bank, they tell you, oh, we can only give you 1,000. But the ATMs are not dispensing new notes. So does that not tell you that even the January 31 deadline that they've given may not be met? This was the same way they started NIN. We told them at that time that this NIN, this deadline would not work. You know how many times they had to
postpone?
At that time when we were saying that, they say, oh, any policy that comes, these people will just criticize. But we are saying the truth, and we are justified. Today we have more than 93 million people enrolled on the NIN, but it has had to take time. You can't just impose a deadline on people that, oh, you must do it within 2 weeks. Oh my God, what you want it to take effect within so short a time? How are you going to make it happen?
The process.
I was in the airport in Ilorin. I wanted to buy Pringles for my children. The woman told me, no, there has been no network today. You have to use cash. And in the end, I couldn't buy as much as I would have loved to buy because I didn't have enough cash. These problems are there. Sometimes you do a transaction, the recipient of the person supposed to be the recipient of the money is waiting. The money, the alert is not coming, and they will not allow you to take possession of the product.
BC, let me have your thoughts on this, because, definitely this is something that one was expecting from what Babajide has been stating so far. But the policy from what the CBN was rightly stating was that it was to control the amount of money in circulation that is out of the banks. Now, with this review, although it might be a good one, does it defeat the purpose by which the CBN was trying to, handle in the first place?
No, I don't think so. Because before now, you could actually transact business more than 100,000 or 500,000, which is currently the case for individuals. It's not. Let me first of all state that 85% of money in circulation, not in bank, is not the problem of Nigerians, because Nigerians are not the ones authorized to ensure what should be in circulation or what should not be in circulation. So that shouldn't be our problem. It's the responsibility of the CBN to control that aspect. And I also want to state that it is not also possible for the CBN not to have an idea of where money released in Nigeria is. That is why we have all these cashless policies that's in different ways and forms. So that is about that. However, I still have an issue, even with the review. You cannot do, for example, a check transaction that is more than 100,000 naira for individuals, even now, even with this review. And, well, there are individuals that actually raise checks that could be more than that. And not necessarily because they are corporate entities. Right. And I think that is still low. Also, the fact that somebody has to pay 3% charge if it is very important for you to transact anything that is above the minimum 500,000 and the 5 million. I think this is also a bit ridiculous because from what the CBN says, such transactions must have been found to be very important. Right. So, for example, if there is a medical emergency where people are expected to probably deposit =1 million naira for treatment, and it's a case of life and death. And you now find out that this is important. It's not somebody trying to, anyway, let's even start, it's my money in any case.
So you don't see it as any justifiable reason why it should be there. Yeah,
and you now ask that fellow to pay 3% commission for
processing
taking
fee.
Processing fee for taking the money that belongs to you. I mean, it looks somehow. And not even in Nigeria, where the number of charges that we get now
increases on a daily.
In fact, they are more than 10.
That's why some people are even running away from the bank.
Yes, you send money to somebody, you pay charges. They send to you, you pay charges. Whatever you do, in fact,
you save money.
You pay charges.
And they are trying to encourage people to
save money. So I think that 3%, 5%
it should be reviewed as well.
Should also be reviewed.
All right, let's quickly go on a very quick break. You're still on to Journalist Hangout. We'll have more discussions on this very issue when we return. Stay with us. Welcome back. It's still on to Journalist Hangout, and we'll be staying on the CBN review of the cash withdrawal policy, which has now increased weekly withdrawals for individuals from 20,000 naira to 500,000 naira. So, Babajide, before we went on break, or while we're on break, rather, we're talking about this change. But my question is, if the CBN policy was targeted towards a cashless economy, what then should the CBN be doing at this point? So knowing that it has to take in it needs to take in other factors to ensure that, okay, everyone is on board this new this economic development, if I would say.
The CBN says, this will help us defeat money laundering and all that. The poor Nigerians, the ordinary Nigerians, the villages and all that, they are not responsible for money laundering, but they are the ones that this thing will affect the most. That is why when Nigerians just jump at a policy because somebody in government push for it, you want to assume that, this is the time for you. You have not done some critical reasoning. There's the poor Nigerian does not have any business with money laundering. It is the elite who are involved in money laundering and using money to perpetrate crime in the country. Some of them are sponsors of terrorism and all that. So they are the ones who move money around anyhow.
So how can the CBN target those individuals? Or what can be done?
It is not, you see where I'm going, it's not even the job of the CBN alone. Part of why I said this thing will fail is because of insecurity.
Okay.
You can't have a system that thinks it can turn everybody to a bank user at once. A lot of our people, due to cultural or religious reasons, will never take their monies to the banks. And I've said it in Kano, that the Kantinkori, you see people that are transacting business in billions. Some of them don't use the banks at all. They don't use the banks at all. And you have business people coming all the way from even Central African Republic to come and buy textiles from there. They don't use the banks. You can't even convince them. I had an uncle who tried to convince one multimillionaire in Kano in the 90s. He said, no, that it's against my faith. And he refused. And he was doing big business, so much money. You can't convince him. They came up with Taj Bank and the Jaiz, the Islamic banks, non-interest banks. But it's still difficult to convince some people to use the banks. Now, what they've done in other countries, I've talked about the South Korea. When they wanted to do something like this, they created incentives.
Right.
They got big business people as champions of the cashless policy, and then created incentives whereby even VAT that you are supposed to pay on your goods, on transactions, because you have subscribed to the cashless idea, they tell you, no, don't pay. Gradually, those big business people were the ones who are now trying to convince others to say, okay, let's do it. Today, South Korea, by percentage, is the second best at this cashless policy thing in the world. By percentage, in terms of the success that they recorded, So we too have to start and do this incrementally.
Right.
Not that you just come and bring a policy. You've not gone to Kaura Mother Kauranamoda, where the big beans farmer does not have a bank account and is doing his business, is doing it well. You have the bulk of the business that we do in our country is in the rural areas.
Right.
And not all of them, the rural areas, will agree to get into a bank. Sometimes it's not even their fault. Sometimes not even their fault. The banks are far away. So this is the thing. Look at a system. Before you do a policy, think critically.
Right.
Can it work in this? We've had situations in the past that our leaders will not think before coming up with a policy. When they now see that, oh, it cannot work, they will be forced to swallow their vomit. You know, you have to think, can it work? Why is it that I can't work here? Why is it that I can't work here? You know, even Soludo tried decimalization. Right. At the end, they couldn't do it. CBN governors should be too clear-headed to be coming up with ideas that they've not thoroughly thought about it and engage people across board. You remember the finance minister said, look, when they wanted to redesign the currency, she said she was not
aware.
So is that the same thing that happened this time? That critical stakeholders were not carried along. Right. I've seen people from manufacturers to petty, these small and medium
enterprises.
Yes, all of them saying, look, this is an attempt to kill POS. This thing will not work. For people to come out like that, it shows that that policy has K-leg, you know. Right, but I'm happy that they've at least jacked it up that way.
To encourage people.
Yes, more people will not complain, you know. So, but at least not to come and say 2020, you can't take more than 20. Are you the owner of the money?
Your final thoughts on this, because we are running out of time.
Yeah, I also think that even the policies that we have on ground, the CBN should try to implement. For example, I know that before now, there is a limit to the cash deposits that companies and individuals could make, and withdrawals also from counter. I don't know if people have been withdrawing more than that and what CBN has been doing about people that attempt to do that. I think we should also work on that. So policies in place, let's ensure that they are well implemented. Right. I've seen occasions where, you know, when it comes to Forex, for example, you cannot deposit more than 10,000, I think, as an individual. But you will be advised to just deposit $9,999.
Several places.
You know, that kind of thing. So we should work around making sure that our policies work.
Work indeed for the good of Nigerians as well.